I watched both Barbie and Oppenheimer, and I don't think that Barbenheimer is a good idea. I'll explain more about why in a little bit, but the simple answer is that the movies are just so different that one will often muddy the experience of the other depending on how you watch it. Now, if you are determined, if you are set on watching both movies on the same day, then at the end I'll give a suggestion on maybe how you could do it. But for now, let's start with the movies themselves. With Barbie, because that's what I first watched. I actually went to a blowout party for Barbie, which was a day or two before the actual movie came out. For attending the screening, I got a Barbie poster and also this pin that I'm wearing on my hat right now. And essentially, the only difference from that to any other screening is, one, they give us the free stuff. Two, for the first 30 minutes of the screening, we showed up at 7, and until 7:35, they played through different songs on the Barbie album, as well as kind of had on-screen prompts for certain like filters and stuff like that, and GIFs that you could use if you wanted. There's one where they had a link. If you go to the website, you could take a selfie and it'd put you on the poster for Barbie, which was pretty cool. Like everyone did that as well. And I guess the third point, the entire theater was pretty much pink. I didn't have any pink clothings, which sucked, but there was so many people there that were in pink. They were all kind of in the mood, in the festive, feeling the festivities, I guess. But if there was an ideal version or an ideal experience for Barbie, that I probably had it there 2 days before the movie came out in a theater full of people that were just rearing to see this movie. And I will say that I really liked it. I thought it was a really funny movie that didn't like. So I'm a fan of Greta Gerwig. I think especially Lady Bird. I think it's Lady Bird gets me every time. And so I expected this movie to be a lot more dramatic than it was. I stayed away from the trailers and stuff for both Barbie and Oppenheimer because I knew both of these movies were ones I was going to watch as soon as they came out, and so I didn't need to be convinced any further. That being said, I just that my expectation was that the movie was going to be a little bit more dramatic, and while it certainly does try to go for those kind of emotional moments, it is almost outright a comedy, out and out a comedy. It is really funny, and there was a lot that I liked about it. The kind of general concept is very again, I didn't see it coming about the way everything works, and so I enjoyed kind of discovering where the plot was going, and then also even though I think maybe I've watched one of the trailers at prior to another movie screening, and I thought that the villain, I'll keep it very spoiler free just in case, but I thought who I thought was going to be the villain was not the villain, or not the antagonist, if you will, I will say. So that was cool. I do have a few problems with it. I think at a certain point, and this isn't a spoiler, but Mattel, who makes Barbie, is in the movie, and at a certain point, the executive board of Mattel is in the middle of this process that we have seen several times already at this point in the movie. So kind of how long it is, if you will. But I just you see them in the middle of this process, and then they just kind of you get thrown to the wayside. You don't think about them, you don't talk about them, and they just kind of randomly show up at another moment. And once again, right after that, they disappear for a little bit, and they show up at a random moment again. So it just kind of felt a little weird. And I think that some of the pacing in the movie is an hour and 54-minute movie, but some of the pacing it works in the favor of the movie in terms of you don't know where it's going. It's a little, it kind of goes back and forth a little bit, but at the same time, you don't know where it's going. It goes back and forth a little bit. So it's those are some kind of minor critiques that I have for the movie in that regard. But I laughed a lot in this movie overall. I mean, the last time I was gonna say Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was the last time I laughed this much, but I also did laugh quite a bit during the blackening. So if you haven't watched that and you're looking for a laugh, there's a recommendation for you. But yeah, it was a really funny movie. I think some people are going to take this the wrong way, and I want to make that very clear. That's not my intent. But I thought Ryan Gosling was awesome in this movie. That's nothing to do with Margot Robbie not being good. I thought she was awesome, as she is in everything that she does. But the difference is that, and I think some of the reason why some people might be saying the same thing, or echoing that sentiment, is that Ryan Gosling's character, Ken, is given a lot more kind of freedom to wiggle around and play and have fun, whereas Margot Robbie's character is obviously, again, not a spoiler because I think it's hinted in the trailer, but it is she's kind of going through an existential crisis of sorts, so she has a little bit more of a serious role, a little bit more of a mixed role, whereas Ryan Gosling's character is so balls to the wall, weird, batshit crazy sometimes. Just he plays up that kind of cartooniness of it, and so it really, he looks like he's having fun, and consequently, when you're watching it, you have fun watching, like, looking at him. And so yeah, no, you have fun, looking at him having fun as well, which I think it's always important when when characters or actors having fun in their characters. I think that does often translate to the audience also having fun in that regard. Boom. If you haven't listened to the last episode or the first episode of the podcast, then you'll get that reference if you do. But nevertheless, what else is great set design, great costumes, just like top notch. I mean, some of this like stuff with the way they kind of build out the Barbie land is awesome to look at. Just the way it's designed, and it can feel a little bit small in terms of where you go while you're at Barbie land. But I think that while you're there, like, everything is so clearly defined, so clearly built out with a purpose, and so I had a really good time with it, and just kind of watching it and taking it all in. That was awesome. And I can't speak for the message of the movie, the kind of the heart of the movie, the thing that it's kind of trying to drive home, because I am not the target audience. I mean, granted, like I said, I had a lot of fun with it, but the message of being a woman in America is not one that I can personally relate to or understand, I should say. I can't attest to that. So I'll leave it for other people who are probably more kind of in that line to discuss and share their thoughts on it. But I will say that I never felt super emotional. I never was like, I didn't feel like my hearts were tugged at, and like they do, like when I watch Lady Bird, for example. But again, for me, I see this as like a really solid comedy with a social commentary, and as someone who watches a lot of Indian movies, I'm kind of fine with if the social commentary doesn't always work, because as long as the rest of everything else around it is good as well. Because, like I said, everything I said, that makes sense. If you want to see me talk more about Barbie, then let me know. Maybe I'll. This is the first time I've done a review like this, so if you want to see more of kind of open, candid conversations about movies, let me know. But with that said, let's talk about Oppenheimer. I don't have anything. I went to a regular screening of Oppenheimer. I went on Friday night, so I don't have any memorabilia or anything like that. So I kind of wore this hat. This bucket hat is the widest one that I have. So I thought it would give me a little bit of that Oppenheimer look. But nevertheless, Oppenheimer, I went to a 11 p.m. showing in IMAX. I got the tickets the week before because the 7 o'clock showing that I was going to go to was packed. I mean, no good seats, and I'm someone who loves to have the center of the theater, perfect seats, and so we decided to go at 11 p.m. instead. When we got the tickets, there were, I think, 2 or 3 other people in the theater, and when we got there, the entire theater was full. It was a packed theater, which didn't end until 2 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, that was an experience kind of unlike any other. It was so unique, and I think the best way to start off kind of my thoughts on Oppenheimer is by saying that I don't think anyone else could really have made this movie. I mean, it is a So from my understanding, I'm not looking at these numbers. This is just kind of my general information that I pick up along the way. I believe this movie had a budget of $100 million, but I do think it does have I think it with probably a little bit more than that. But then I think with promotion and stuff like that, it hits closer to 200 million total budget. So with $200 million to shoot a semi black and white 3-hour long biopic with an incredible cast of characters. I mean, even like people that are on screen for like 2 scenes, or like someone you'll like, Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like that kind of thing. No one else could really get the green light for a movie like this. Very few people, I'll say, could get the green light for a movie like this. And Christopher Nolan is one of them. And also, very few people would warrant a movie like this. And J. Robert Oppenheimer is one of those people. This was such a crazy movie. I knew a little bit about Oppenheimer, having done like a project when I was in college for like this class that was, I honest to God took for easy credits. It was just like a quick project, and I did like surface level research. So I knew that Oppenheimer was involved with the Manhattan Project and the constructing of the first atomic bomb, but I didn't quite know as much as was in this movie. I don't think this is a fully accurate movie. Since I've watched the movie, I know a lot more about Oppenheimer, not just because I watched the movie, but I also started watching the To End All Wars documentary on Peacock, it is, I think, which is interesting. And then I also did an 1.5 hour deep dive, or not like a dive, I should say, down the rabbit hole. I went down the rabbit hole about Oppenheimer yesterday, where I just kind of read through about Oppenheimer and his life, and just kind of everything revolving around the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb and that whole thing. It was very interesting. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a link down in the description below for it, because it was it was just like I was learning so much, and he's clearly such a well-learned man, that I think this is Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, is probably the only way some people will ever kind of understand that story. And I really do think that some of the conversations that happen in this movie that are shown to have happened in real life are some of the most important conversations in human history. Like, so many things like that are so significant to the world, and like so many life earth changing decisions were made that I just, yeah, I mean, I was absolutely absorbed by this movie. It is 3 hours long, and it just keeps going, and it's so fascinating to see it all. And I will be seeing it again, because I want to take it all in. I want to just kind of really absorb it in. It's one of those. It's a Christopher Nolan movie, so by that regard alone, you have to watch it twice. And as someone who just always loved Christopher Nolan, I hate to admit it, but I thought that if there was ever a Christopher Nolan movie that would not be on par with the rest of his movies, I thought Oppenheimer would be it, just because of it's a biopic, and it's just, I don't know. I was an idiot, all right? This movie is so good, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it's like I don't like to use, again, if you watched my video on the forgettable Mission Impossible game, where I talked about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, I just don't like to throw around words like perfect. I don't think perfect cinema exists, just because there's always something, I mean, especially if you ask the person who made a film, definitely though there's like, I wish I could have tweaked that, and whatever. But this is a near perfect film. It does exactly what it sets out to, and that's kind of really what I look at when I'm talking about a movie that is perfect, but what the filmmakers set out to try to tell, their goal for telling the story. And I think they absolutely nailed it. I mean, the cast is incredible. Everyone, especially Cillian Murphy, but same thing with Robert Downey Jr., Matt Damon. Like they just disappear into their roles, and watching Cillian Murphy is so fascinating because you just watch him, and he just is in this role, and you could, along with obviously looking like him, and he has the great costuming and everything and makeup, but there's like this weight to his eyes. Like when he looks, you can kind of just tell there's like so much more of like kind of despair and darkness behind it. And if anything, if I have any kind of real drawbacks of having now learned a little bit more about Oppenheimer and then watching the movie or thinking back to watching the movie, I went into the movie not knowing too much, so that it would kind of all be a natural kind of surprise for me, as if I was just watching a regular story. So but having read about Oppenheimer and then thinking back on the movie, I think the only thing they really don't fully show is how depressed of a man he is. But even then, I think Cillian Murphy has a lot of that kind of shows through his eyes as well, which I think is which is just phenomenal acting. And I think that I will say I do also, again, going with the fact that I know a little bit more about Oppenheimer now and thinking back to it, certain details, I do like the way they presented him. Like Oppenheimer is known for it, when he's in his periods of concentration, he would sometimes not eat food, and he'd just forget to eat because he was just kind of absorbed and his mind's kind of spiraling and whatever. And like there's this very small throwaway moment in the movie that you don't even fully kind of process. It's just like a scene where someone offers him, hey, like you should probably eat, and gives him a little bit of food. And I thought that was like a nice small way without taking too much attention to it. Like you didn't need a character to be like, and you don't eat you don't eat a lot of food when you're worried. Like, instead of having that kind of thing, it's just small interaction that kind of tells that that tells that story. I thought that was a cool touch. But yeah, I mean, it's been 2 days now since I've watched Oppenheimer, and it is still very much so on my head. And also, so it has the kind of the typical expected Christopher Nolan, non-linear storytelling, to the point where it can almost be a little bit like, hold on, give me a second. Who's okay? Is this here now, or we're back here now? There's a lot of that going on, but about like I want to say maybe 60% through the movie, which sounds crazy when you think about it, but about 60% of the movie is when they kind of really click into place, and then you're just kind of watching it a little bit more in a, like, by then you should be able to get everything fully. But despite that, it has that kind of the non-linear storytelling, but it quickly, you do, as long as, assuming you're not completely lost and just struggling to catch up the entire time, it's not too hard to follow. And I think the end is such a powerful ending. It gave me goosebumps. I was sitting there in the theater, and I was like this because I was like holding myself, because I was just kind of like just staring at the screen in anticipation of like, okay. And the final line is delivered, and I mean, I was just like, oh shit, like, oh fuck. And then the title comes on, and the movie's over, and the whole theater, which has been pretty much, again, a full theater, it is quiet as if they had just watched A Quiet Place. Like, it is that, just everyone's just in that stunned. And then as soon as obviously the credits roll, everyone's like, can we talk now? Like, is it okay? And and yeah, it was awesome. And so while I did, obviously I do like Oppenheimer more, but I really enjoyed both Barbie and Oppenheimer. But the reason, like I said, the reason why I don't think you should watch both of them, participate in Barbenheimer, the crazy trend, which I have literally, it's crazy seeing like box office analysts being like, I've never seen anything like this before. Barbenheimer, it's 2 movies and they're both doing really well. And like that whole thing I find just fascinating. But the reason why I don't recommend it is, obviously, like I said, they they are so tonally different that you don't always like watching Barbie, for example. Will like go to and then going to Oppenheimer, you'll be like, wow, this is really serious. I think there are maybe 2 points in Oppenheimer where everyone kind of like laughed and was like, that's a good joke. That's a good joke. Barbie, you're pretty much laughing the entire time. And then if you watch Oppenheimer first, you have this so much darkness and thoughts, and then you get like, like stunned. You get tonal whiplash from, you're like, now we're going from half black and white and dark and depressing to Barbie and it's pink and just kind of that whole thing. But that's obviously one thing. So you're almost doing yourself a disservice. I get it's this hot trend and you want to do it. It's like it's like dressing up for the Minions movie. It's the hot trend, so I get what people doing it, and I know I was actually taught the lady that gave me the tickets for Oppenheimer on IMAX. She first of all, you could tell she was exhausted. This lady probably had a very long day, but she said that a lot of the people who went to one movie were going to the other, and so I get that it's the hot trend that people should do, but you're doing yourself a disservice by watching both of them back to back, because you're just kind of you're not getting the most of it. You're not enjoying one, and then the other, you're just kind of, it becomes too muddled of an experience. That being said, if you're like, I absolutely need to watch this movie back to back, I would recommend a small addendum. This is how I would do it. I would watch Barbie, and then after Barbie, I would go get a meal, lunch, watch it before lunch, and then then second movie, or Barbie, dinner, and then Oppenheimer, because then you have a little bit more of, you can talk about the jokes, you can laugh a little bit, and then you can go into Oppenheimer and get just like just feel like you lose all hope in humanity, and then you kind of, you can think about it and talk about it on the way home, just like I did. I mean, again, like I said, the movie ended at 2:00 for his Oppenheimer ended 2 a.m, and I lived 50 minutes away from the theater, the closest IMAX theater, and the entire ride I was just like, oh my god, and then this, and then there was this also, and then it was crazy. But I am enjoying all that. Being said, I am enjoying this kind of the success of both of these movies. If you don't know, actually, because now we know about how Barbenheimer has done, because it is Sunday. We're getting some reports. So this is domestic, so it's all United States, but it's still important numbers. Barbie has grossed $155 million. Oppenheimer has grossed $80.5 million, which I believe Barbie was originally projected to make $100 million, and Oppenheimer was, I think, somewhere around $50 million is what the original projections were. So well above the projections for both of these movies. This is the 4th biggest box office weekend in history. The 4th biggest. Absolutely incredible. And then also, Barbie marks the biggest debut ever for a woman director, and Oppenheimer is the biggest original Christopher Nolan debut, which, if you're wondering what that means, it doesn't include Batman. It's original, emphasis on original. So it's all his like Interstellar, Inception, Dunkirk, Tenet. Well, I'll talk about that. But with that said, I'm very happy. I love the fact that, first of all, in July of 2023, we have 3 fantastic movies in the course of 2 weeks. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Barbie, and Oppenheimer. Whether you want your big budget summer blockbuster, you want a outright comedy, or with a little bit of social commentary in there as well, and then, or you want just a deep pontificating biopic about one of the most significant people to ever live, you got it. It is. I'm just glad that after the pandemic, we're finally able to come back to the theaters, and this also, I think, proves that we don't always need a gigantic superhero extravaganza to bring people to the theaters. Sometimes it can just be some good movies made by some really talented people. And so, yeah, I'm glad that we don't ever have to worry about it. Movies are back. Nothing's going to happen now. We did it. So, something doesn't feel right.